Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into HR analytics, basically using data to make smarter decisions about people and, well, how the whole company's doing.
Right. You also hear it called people analytics, sometimes workforce analytics. Same idea.
Exactly. And our mission here is to give you a clear path, sort of a shortcut, to understanding what HR analytics is all about, why it's important, how it gets used without getting totally bogged down.
We've pulled together a bunch of sources, definitions, how it's changed over time, applications, challenges, the whole bit. We'll try and synthesize it all.
Sounds good. So let's dive right in. At its heart, what is HR analytics?
Okay, so simply put, it's about collecting, analyzing, and then interpreting HR data systematically.
Okay.
The fundamental goal. It's really to gain knowledge that you can then use to make actual improvements. Changes in HR processes, inform decisions about employees, and ultimately organizational performance.
So we're shifting from gut feelings in HR.
Precisely. Moving away from just intuition to decisions backed by solid evidence. Data-driven HR.
And how does that tie into the bigger business picture? Is it just an HR thing?
Oh, definitely not. It connects directly to core business outcomes. Things like, generating revenue, minimizing expenses, managing risks, hitting those big strategic goals.
Right.
How well you manage your people impacts all of that. HR analytics gives you the insights to optimize your workforce and your HR strategies to really support those overall business objectives.
Makes sense. So we know the what's. Let's talk about the why.
Yeah.
What's really pushing this trend? Our sources mentioned pull and push factors.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it. Let's start with the pull factors, the internal business needs that are kind of demanding this approach.
Okay.
First big one, the war for talent. It's cliche, but it's real. Companies are fighting hard for skilled people. So HR analytics helps here by, say, identifying crucial skill gaps before they become a crisis, or predicting who might be thinking about leaving attrition risk, and even designing better recruitment and training.
So it makes talent management much more strategic?
Exactly. You might find, for instance, that candidates you source from a specific niche online community stay 40% longer in their first year compared to those from, say, big general job boards. That's a really concrete insight that might change how you recruit.
Interesting. Okay, what else is pulling HR this way?
Well, there's just this broader shift across businesses towards evidence-based decision-making. It's not just HR.
Right. Finance, marketing, they've been doing it for ages.
Totally. So HR is catching up, using real-time data, even AI sometimes, for smarter hiring, managing performance, boosting engagement. It helps reduce bias, too.
And I imagine being able to show the impact of HR work is a huge plus.
Absolutely. That's the third pull factor. Linking HR activities directly to business results. Quantifying things.
Like how?
Like showing how a specific percentage increase in employee engagement actually correlates with a measurable rise in revenue growth or a drop in customer complaints.
Okay.
Suddenly, HR isn't just seen as a cost center. It's demonstrating clear value. It speaks the language the rest of the business understands: numbers, outcomes.
Right. Giving HR that seat at the table.
You got it. And the last pull is really moving beyond those basic HR dashboards that just tell you what happened last quarter.
The old reporting style.
Yeah. HR analytics, especially with machine learning and big data, offers predictive power. It lets you anticipate workforce trends, not just react to them.
Okay, so those are the internal needs pulling HR towards analytics. What about the push factors?
Yeah.
Technology, external stuff.
Right, the push. First big one is just the sheer amount of digital information readily available now. Think about HRIS, human resource information systems. These central databases hold tons of employee info. Add cloud computing, AI platforms for surveys, performance reviews. Companies are sitting on mountains of data.
So the data's there, we just need to use it.
Exactly, which leads to the second push. Massive advancements in the analytics tools and tech themselves. AI, machine learning, big data analytics, these aren't just buzzwords anymore. They make HR analytics way more powerful and, frankly, more accessible than it used to be.
The tools have caught up.
Definitely. The third push, success stories. Big names like Google, IBM, Amazon. They've shown publicly how they used analytics to seriously improve hiring, keep people happier, reduce turnover.
Success breeds imitation.
You bet. When other companies see those results, they get interested. And finally, related to what you said earlier, analytics is just becoming standard practice in other departments.
Like finance and marketing.
Right. So there's a bit of pressure or maybe encouragement for HR to adopt similar data-driven tools and strategies. It's becoming the expected way to operate.
Less of an option. More of a necessity. Okay, so it hasn't always been this sophisticated, has it? Let's talk about the evolution. Our sources lay out some stages.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. We can think about it in roughly 4 stages. Stage 1, back in the, say, 70s through the 90s, was really operational reporting.
Okay.
Focus was purely on record keeping. Headcount, turnover numbers, absenteeism, payroll, often done manually, maybe basic spreadsheets, very descriptive, just what happened. HR was seen mainly as Adam's support.
Just counting things, not really analyzing why.
Pretty much. Then stage 2, early 2000s, we get advanced reporting. This is where ERP systems and early HR dashboards started appearing.
Ah, the dashboard era.
Exactly. You started getting real-time visuals of metrics like turnover trends over time, maybe linking training hours to productivity scores. Still mostly descriptive, looking backwards, but slicker, more timely.
Still looking in the rearview mirror, though.
Right. The big shift, stage 3, happens around the 2010s with strategic HR analytics. This is where predictive analytics really enters the picture.
Okay, now we're talking future.
Yep. Using machine learning, AI, big data to forecast things like who's likely to leave, what competencies predict leadership success. HR starts using data to actually inform strategy, anticipate challenges.
So moving from reactive to proactive, that's a key change.
Huge change. And that brings us to now, stage 4, 2020s and beyond. Prescriptive and AI-driven HR analytics.
Prescriptive.
Yeah. So it's not just predicting what might happen, but actually recommending specific actions to take based on the data. Like AI tools analyzing real-time employee feedback, maybe from chatbots or internal comms, identifying dips in sentiment in a specific team, and then suggesting targeted interventions. Maybe specific training or a change in workload distribution. It's directly integrating with business strategy in real time.
Wow. So from what happened to why it happened to what might happen and now what should we do about it, that's quite the evolution.
It really is.
So let's get practical. Where are we seeing HR analytics actually being used day-to-day in companies now?
Oh, it's applied across the board in HR. Take recruitment and talent acquisition. Analytics helps identify the characteristics of the best candidates, speeds up hiring time, reduces costs, refines selection criteria.
Makes hiring smarter.
Definitely. For example, analyzing past hires might show that candidates excelling in a specific online skilled assessment are 3 times more likely to be top performers in a certain role. That's actionable. Then there's employee engagement and satisfaction. Analyzing survey feedback, comments, identifying what really drives engagement, or predicting who might be disengaged and at risk of leaving.
Getting ahead of problems.
Exactly. For performance management, it's about tracking productivity trends more objectively, moving beyond just subjective manager reviews, providing data for better feedback conversations.
Makes those conversations less awkward, more factual.
Hopefully, more objective, certainly. For employee retention and turnover, it's huge. Identifying those high-risk employees we talked about, digging into the reasons people leave, and then developing targeted retention strategies. Maybe offering specific development paths to high potentials showing itchy feet.
Okay.
In learning and development, it helps spot skill gaps across the workforce, actually measure if training programs are working, and even personalize learning recommendations for individuals.
Tailoring development. Makes sense.
Yep. Compensation and benefits ensuring pay is fair and competitive, spotting and addressing pay gaps, figuring out which benefits employees actually value to attract and keep talent.
Crucial stuff.
Absolutely. Diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI data is essential here. Measuring diversity metrics accurately, identifying potential bias in hiring or promotion processes, tracking if DEI initiatives are actually moving the needle.
Can't manage what you don't measure.
Precisely. And even things like attendance and absenteeism management. Analytics can spot patterns, help understand the root causes. Is it burnout, lack of flexibility, and guide strategies to improve attendance and well-being.
Wow, okay, that's a really wide scope. Could you maybe walk us through one scenario, like reducing turnover, just to see how it all fits together?
Sure, good idea. Let's take reducing employee turnover. Step 1 is data collection. You gather info from lots of places. Exit interviews, why are people saying they left? Performance reviews, any patterns before they're resigned. Salary data, are we competitive? Engagement survey results, what was their satisfaction like? Maybe even workload data.
Okay, pulling it all together.
Right. Step 2, data analysis. You use analytics techniques to sift through it. Maybe you find turnovers way higher for employees in their first 2 years. And maybe those people consistently mention limited growth opportunities in surveys, and their managers tend to get lower feedback scores.
That's connecting the dots.
Exactly. Step 3, predictive insights. Based on those patterns, you can build a model to identify current employees who fit that high-risk profile.
So you can see who might be next.
Potentially, yes. Which leads to step 4, actionable strategy. Based on those findings, the company might implement, say, a better onboarding and mentoring program for newbies, invest in manager training focused on career development conversations and giving good feedback, and maybe proactively reach out to those identified high-risk employees to discuss their career path.
Data leads to analysis. Analysis leads to prediction. Prediction leads to targeted action. Got it.
That's the core loop.
But it sounds great in theory. I imagine putting this into practice isn't always smooth sailing. What are the big challenges companies run into?
Oh, definitely not always smooth. A huge one is just curating and combining the data. HR data often lives in separate silos. Payroll system here, performance system there, learning platform over yonder.
Right. Different systems, different formats.
Exactly. Cleaning that data, standardizing it, integrating it, that takes time and specific skills. Data experts are often needed. Which leads to another challenge: the lack of data analytics skills within HR teams themselves.
The HR folks aren't necessarily data scientists.
Traditionally, no, so there's often a skills gap. You need training or need to hire people with those analytical skills. Then there are privacy and compliance issues. This is sensitive employee data we're talking about.
GDPR, RTA, things like that.
Absolutely. You have to be incredibly careful and follow all the regulations. Insufficient IT resources can be a barrier too, especially for smaller companies. You need the right tech infrastructure for advanced analytics.
So it requires investment.
It does. And sometimes you face employee resistance. HR pros might worry about analytics taking the human out of HR, and employees might worry about how their data is used, potential bias in algorithms.
Understandable concerns.
Very. Transparency and ethical guidelines are crucial. Other hurdles include starting analytics projects with unclear objectives, just collecting data for data's sake, facing resource limitations, budget, staff, ongoing data collection challenges if systems aren't integrated, and getting stakeholder buy-in. Sometimes leadership is skeptical.
And those data silos you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, data silos across departments prevent getting that complete picture of the employee experience. Lots to navigate.
It really sounds like success needs a mix of tech, skills, strategy, and careful consideration of the human and ethical side.
Okay, let's talk more about the data itself. Where does all this information actually come from?
Good question. Our sources break it down into internal and external data sources.
Okay, let's start inside the company. Internal sources.
The bedrock is usually the Human Resource Information System, HRIS. That's got your core employee records, demographics, job history, pay, leave balances, attendance, basic performance info.
The main employee database. Right. Then you've got recruitment and selection data. That's everything from applications, where candidates came from, hiring sources, assessment results, interview scores, time to hire, cost per hire metrics.
A whole hiring funnel.
Yep. Performance management systems contribute goal tracking data, appraisal scores, manager feedback, 360-degree feedback sometimes.
So performance over time.
Exactly. And super important, employee surveys and feedback. Engagement surveys, pulse surveys, satisfaction surveys, comments, these capture employee sentiment and perceptions.
Direct voice of the employee.
Crucial. Also, learning and development records, who took what training, completion rates, skill assessments, certifications earned, compensation and benefits reports detailing salary bands, bonuses paid out, which benefits people are using, and finally, turnover and retention reports, who left, when, stated reasons from exit interviews, retention rates by department or manager.
Wow, that's a lot generated just internally. What about outside the company? External data.
External data provides vital context. Things like industry and market reports give you salary benchmarks for specific roles in your location, general hiring trends.
See how you stack up.
Right. Government reports and compliance data include things like labor laws, required diversity reporting, safety regulations, broader workforce demographic trends. Social media and employer branding sites, think LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, give you clues about your company's reputation as an employer. What are people saying?
Public perception.
Yep. And finally, broader economic and demographic data, unemployment rates in your area, inflation, education levels in the workforce. This helps with strategic workforce planning.
So you need both the internal picture and the external landscape. And pulling all this together, why go to all that trouble? What are the main goals?
It really boils down to a few key things: supporting workforce planning and talent management, making sure you have the right people, right skills, both now and for the future. That includes forecasting needs, succession planning.
Future-proofing the workforce.
Exactly. Also, improving recruitment and selection. Using data to find better candidates faster, using assessment methods that actually predict success, optimizing sourcing channels.
Smarter hiring.
Yep. Optimizing training and development by identifying real skill gaps and measuring if training is actually effective. Enhancing employee engagement and productivity by understanding the drivers and addressing issues. And ultimately, reducing HR costs, things like lowering recruitment spend by improving retention, optimizing benefits costs.
So it all circles back to making better, more efficient, more effective decisions about people. Now, earlier we touched on different levels of analysis. Can you unpack the 4 main types of HR analytics?
Sure, it's often presented as a progression. We start with descriptive analytics. This is the most basic level. It's about summarizing past data to understand what happened.
Like, what was our turnover rate last year?
Exactly. Or average time to fill a position, absenteeism rates. It answers the question, what happened? Simple summaries.
Okay, stage 1. Describe the past.
Right. Level 2 is diagnostic analytics. This tries to figure out why something happened. So if descriptive analytics shows turnover went up, diagnostic analytics digs into why.
Looking for causes.
Yep. Analyzing exit interview themes, correlating turnover with low engagement scores, or maybe a specific manager, it answers, why did it happen?
Okay, understanding the why.
Level 3 is predictive analytics. This uses historical data and statistical models to forecast future outcomes.
The crystal ball stage.
Sort of. It's about probabilities. Predicting which employees are at a high risk of leaving in the next 6 months, or forecasting hiring needs based on projected business growth. It answers, what is likely to happen?
Allows you to anticipate and prepare.
Precisely. And the final, most advanced level is prescriptive analytics. This goes a step further than prediction. It actually recommends specific actions or interventions based on the predictive insights.
So not just who might leave, but what should we do about it?
Exactly. Suggesting targeted retention bonuses for specific high performers identified as flight risks, or recommending personalized development plans based on predicted skill gaps. It answers, what should you do?
Describe, diagnose, predict, prescribe. A clear progression in complexity and value.
That's the idea. Each level builds on the previous one.
Now, our sources also mention some underlying theoretical frameworks. Are there specific models that guide HR analytics?
Yeah, a couple are often cited. One is the Harvard Analytical Framework model. It's quite comprehensive. It looks at the interplay between different stakeholder interests, like employees, management unions, various situational factors like the economy, labor market, and then specific HRM policy choices.
Like how you handle recruitment rewards, work design.
Exactly. Employee influence, HR flow, hiring, promotion, leaving, reward systems, work systems. The model then links these policies to key HRM outcomes, often called the 4 Cs. Commitment, competence, congruence, alignment, and cost effectiveness. And finally, it considers the long-term consequences for individuals, the organization, and society.
So a very holistic view, connecting lots of pieces.
Very much so. Another well-known one is the matching model, sometimes called the Michigan model. This one's a bit more focused on strategic alignment.
How so?
It emphasizes tightly aligning 4 key HR practices, selection, appraisal, rewards, and development, directly with the organization's overall business strategy. The goal is a cohesive HR system that directly supports achieving strategic objectives.
More direct line from HR activities to business goals.
Right. And there's also the LMP framework. It's less a theoretical model and more a practical strategic approach. LMP stands for Logic, Analytics, Measures, and Process.
Okay, break that down.
Logic is about clearly understanding the connection between HR activities and business strategy. Analytics is choosing and using the right data analysis techniques. Measures involves identifying the key metrics to track progress and impact. And process is about setting up clear systems for collecting, managing, and using the data effectively.
So LMP is like a roadmap for actually doing data-driven HR.
Kind of, yeah. A practical framework for implementation.
Okay. Now, getting into the nuts and bolts of data. Variables and measurement scales. Sounds a bit technical, but probably important.
Absolutely fundamental, actually. A variable is just anything you can measure that can change or vary. In HR, that's tons of things. Age, salary, job satisfaction score on a survey, years of experience, performance rating.
Things we track about employees.
Right. And we talk about different types. An independent variable is something we think influences another variable. A dependent variable is the outcome we're measuring, the one being influenced.
Like training program is independent and job performance is dependent.
Perfect example. We see if changes in the independent variable training lead to changes in the dependent variable performance. There are other types too, like intervening variables, but those are the main ones.
Okay. And measurement scales.
Right. This tells us how we're measuring the variable, which affects what kind of analysis we can do. There are four main levels. Nominal is just categories with no order, like department, sales, marketing, IT, or gender.
Just labels.
Exactly. Ordinal has an order or rank, but the gaps between ranks aren't necessarily equal. Think performance ratings, poor, average, good, excellent, or maybe results of a race, first, second, third. You know the order, but not the precise difference between them.
Okay, ordered categories.
Then interval. This has order and equal intervals between points, but no true zero. The classic example is temperature in Celsius or Fahrenheit. The difference between 10 and 20 degrees is the same as between 20 and 30, but 0 degrees doesn't mean no temperature. Some HR survey scales might be treated as interval, like an engagement score from 0 to 100.
Equal gaps, but 0 is arbitrary.
Right. And finally, ratio scale. This has order, equal intervals, and a true 0 point, meaning 0 actually represents the absence of the thing being measured. Salary, years of experience, number of training hours, weight. 0 salary means no salary. This allows for all mathematical operations.
Got it. Nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Knowing the scale tells you what stats you can run.
Precisely. You can't calculate an average department, for instance.
Right. And talking about data, its quality must be vital, right? Garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely critical. Data integrity is the term for it. It means the accuracy, consistency, and reliability of your HR data throughout its entire life cycle, from collection to analysis to reporting.
So, making sure the attendance records, performance scores, salary data, recruitment info, survey responses, all of it is actually correct and trustworthy.
Exactly. If that data is flawed, incomplete, inaccurate, inconsistent, then any analysis you do, any decisions you make based on it will be unreliable. Good data integrity is fundamental for sound decision-making, building predictive models that work, creating trust in the analytics, and even ensuring a good employee experience like getting paid correctly.
The foundation for everything else. Makes sense. So what tools do analysts actually use to crunch these numbers?
There are several go-to statistical software packages. R is a big one. It's open source, very powerful for statistics, visualization, and especially machine learning. Steep learning curve sometimes, though. Stata is popular in social sciences and economics, good for certain types of statistical analysis like panel data. MATLAB is more common in engineering and scientific computing, but has strong capabilities. And then there's SPSS.
SPSS seems common in business and social science contexts.
A very statistical package for the social sciences. It's generally seen as more user-friendly with a graphical interface. Widely used for data manipulation, descriptive stats, and common inferential tests used in HR.
What are some key SPSS features an HR analyst might use?
Well, it has two main views. Variable view is where you set up your data structure, define each variable's name, type, numeric text, add labels, define value codes like 1 male, 2 female, specify how missing data is handled, and set the measurement scale, nominal, ordinal, scale, SPSS lumps, interval, and ratio into scale.
Setting up the metadata.
Exactly. Then data view is this spreadsheet-like grid where you actually see and enter the raw data. SPSS makes it easy to merge files like adding new survey responses, adding cases rows, or combining survey data with employee demographic data, adding variables columns.
Combining different data sets.
Right. You can also easily compute new variables. For example, creating an age variable from a date of birth variable, or calculating a composite engagement score from several survey items using a formula. And a handy feature called visual binning lets you quickly group a continuous variable like salary into categories or bins like salary bands for analysis.
So a good toolkit for getting the data ready and doing the analysis. And speaking of analysis, our sources talk about two main families of statistical tests, parametric and non-parametric. What's the difference?
Yeah, that's a key distinction. Parametric tests are generally more powerful, but they come with stricter assumptions about the data. The main one is that the data for the variable you're analyzing should be roughly normally distributed, that classic bell curve shape.
Okay.
They're typically used with interval or ratio scale data, what SPSS calls scale, and they often work best with larger sample sizes. Common examples include t-tests.
For comparing two group means?
Right, like comparing the average performance scores of two different teams, independent t-test, or comparing scores before and after a training program for the same group, paired t-test. ANOVA, analysis of variance, is used to compare means across more than two groups. Pearson correlation measures the linear relationship between two continuous variables, like salary and performance score. And linear regression models how one or more independent variables predict a continuous dependent variable.
So powerful tools if your data fits the bill normally distributed interval ratio scale.
Exactly. But what if it doesn't? What if your data is skewed, or it's only ordinal or nominal?
Then you need the other family.
Then you turn to non-parametric tests. These are often called distribution-free tests because they don't rely on the assumption of a normal distribution. They're great for non-normal data, and they work well with ordinal ranked data and even nominal categorical data in some cases, like the chi-square test. They can also be more robust with smaller sample sizes.
So more flexible in terms of data assumptions.
Generally, yes. Many non-parametric tests are alternatives to specific parametric tests. For example, the Mann-Whitney U-test is like the non-parametric version of the independent t-test. The Wilcoxon sign rank test is the alternative to the paired t-test. The Kruskal-Wallis test is the alternative to one-way ANOVA. Spearman's rank correlation is the alternative to Pearson correlation for ranked data. And the chi-square test is widely used to see if there's an association between two categorical variables, like gender and participation in a leadership program.
Okay, so you choose the test based on your research question and the characteristics of your data, its distribution and measurement scale.
That's the key takeaway. Using the right test ensures your conclusions are statistically valid.
Makes perfect sense. Finally, let's zoom in on one really critical application area you mentioned, employee engagement. First off, what exactly is employee engagement? It feels like more than just happiness.
It absolutely is. Employee engagement isn't just satisfaction. It's about an employee's emotional commitment to the organization and its goals. It's about enthusiasm, dedication, and crucially, a willingness to exert discretionary effort to go the extra mile.
So they're invested, they care. Why is measuring that so important?
Because it links directly to so many critical business outcomes. Highly engaged employees tend to stay longer, so it enhances retention. They're generally more productive and deliver higher quality work, improving productivity. Engagement fosters a more positive organizational culture. Measuring it can help detect burnout or well-being issues before they become severe, and having an engaged workforce boosts your employer brand. Engaged employees are often your best ambassadors.
So it's a lead indicator for a lot of good things and a warning sign for bad things. How do companies actually measure it?
There's a whole toolkit. Employee surveys are probably the most common method, standardized ones like the Gallup Q12 or Aon Hewitt's model or custom-built ones. They ask questions designed to tap into those feelings of commitment and enthusiasm.
The annual survey.
Often, yes, though poll surveys are becoming more popular too. These are much shorter, more frequent check-ins, maybe just a few questions weekly or monthly, often focused on specific topics.
More real-time feedback.
Exactly. One-on-one meetings between managers and employees are crucial for qualitative insights. Managers can directly ask about engagement, challenges, career goals. Focus groups can provide richer, deeper qualitative data on what's driving engagement or disengagement for specific groups. And increasingly, technology like sentiment analysis is used.
Analyzing text.
Yep. Using natural language processing, NLP, to analyze text data from open-ended survey comments, internal social platforms, even emails sometimes, to gauge overall sentiment and identify key themes related to engagement.
So a mix of quantitative surveys and qualitative conversations and analysis. And how does HR data tie into analyzing engagement?
Well, the survey data itself is obviously key HR data. Analytics comes in through survey data analysis, slicing and dicing the results by department, tenure, manager, demographics, looking for trends, using statistical tests to see what factors significantly correlate with high or low engagement scores.
Finding the patterns in the survey results.
Right. But you also correlate engagement scores with other HR data. For example, do teams with higher engagement scores also have lower turnover and retention rates? That validates the link. How does engagement relate to absenteeism rates? Is there a connection between engagement scores and performance appraisal ratings?
Looking for connections across different data points.
Exactly. Do employees on teams with high engagement scores have higher rates of internal mobility and promotion? Does engagement correlate with participation rates in learning and development programs? Analyzing these connections gives a much richer, more holistic picture of what engagement looks like in the organization and what factors influence it.
So engagement isn't just one survey score, it's woven into the fabric of many HR data points.
Precisely. And analyzing it that way allows organizations to move beyond just measuring it to actively understanding and improving it with targeted strategies.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've really covered the landscape of HR analytics from its basic definition and the drivers behind it through its evolution over the decades, the huge range of applications in areas like recruitment, engagement, and retention.
Yeah. The challenges companies face putting it into practice, the crucial data sources, both internal and external, the different levels of analysis from descriptive to prescriptive.
Right, and the underlying frameworks, the importance of understanding variables and data integrity, the tools like SPSS, choosing the right statistical tests, and digging deep into measuring something as vital as employee engagement.
It really underscores how HR analytics empowers organizations, moving beyond that gut feel to make genuinely informed, data-backed decisions about their people, arguably their most critical asset.
Absolutely. It transforms HR into a much more strategic function. Well, thanks so much for breaking all that down.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating and rapidly evolving field.
So to leave you, our listener, with something to think about, consider your own context. What specific HR processes or challenges could really benefit from a deeper dive into the data? What hidden potential might be unlocked by consistently tracking and strategically applying HR insights? It might just be the key to boosting not only HR effectiveness, but the future success of the entire organization.